What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of The Past and the Present. Now, George Washington is arguably one of America's most famous figures. He not only fought the British, but he fought internal enemies, as well as forging an alliance with the French, and famously giving up power twice. Once after the war, and again after his second term of office. Now, what if I told you that there was a similar figure to Washington in Haitian history? He had a little bit of Washington and a little bit of Benedict Arnold. So let's bring the past into the present with Toussaint Louverture.
There are many figures who contribute to history. Most are overlooked, some command the spotlight, and some are simply forgotten. American history is no exception, with heroes, traitors, villains, and simply those who were in the right spot at the right time. But all these figures, good or bad, would contribute to this story, our story. This is Forgotten Figures.
As I said in the beginning, Louverture could arguably be described as a cross between Washington and Benedict Arnold. He was smart and cunning, he was part soldier and part politician, but his ending would be different than either of them. He would be born a slave on May 20th, 1743, in the French island of Saint Domingue. He was the oldest of 6 children who would survive infancy. He showed a talent for riding horses and was trained as an equestrian and coachman. He was baptized in the Catholic faith and taught the African language of Elada, where his parents were from, along with Creole and traditional French of the elite. Sometime between 1772 and 1776, he was freed and was married by 1776 or 1777. He dedicated himself to building wealth and becoming a planter, something he would continue to pursue even through a war, eventually owning numerous slaves, 31 properties, and earning 300,000 colonial livres a year, making him the richest person on the island by 1798. Then, in 1789, the French Revolution broke out with the storming of the Bastille. The rising up of the Third Estate in France presented an opportunity for many, and 2 mixed-race merchants from Saint Domingue tried to get rights for the island's nobility but failed. This would lead to a failed revolt on the island in 1790, but the fuse was lit. On August 14, 1791, 200 black and mixed men gathered in secret to plan a revolt on the island. Louverture was not named a leader of this just yet. Instead, he was to be a lieutenant to Georges Biassou. Louverture moved his family and hid his old overseer, occasionally bringing them food and keeping them safe. Towards the end of 1791, he would be directly involved in a failed negotiation exchanging prisoners, but at the same time, he also helped to prevent a massacre. During 1792, as the revolution gained momentum and more territory was occupied, Louverture was given command of a fortified post called La Tannerie, and maintained a line of similar posts between rebel-held territory and French territory. It was somewhere around this time that he formally adopted the surname of Louverture, meaning opening or the one who opened the way. Clearly, it was a symbolic change. In June 1793, the Haitian revolutionaries secured an alliance with the Spanish. This allowed him to take command of Spanish auxiliary forces and to take more territory. The new French revolutionary government gave in to early demands of those on the island and issued a proclamation on February 4th, 1794, abolishing slavery. After this, tensions between the Spanish and Toussaint began to grow and, as they did with Benedict Arnold in the American Revolution, he began to court the other side. Debate continues on when he made the decision to fight for the French, but it can be narrowed down to May or June of 1794. For his support, and possibly for political leverage, Louverture was promoted to a full general in 1796, and his sons were allowed to attend school in France with the other children of colonial officers. Here's a fun fact about that. His sons often ran away from school, and this happened enough times that they were made to attend a branch of the old University of Paris, where they often dined with members of French nobility. One such member, Josephine de Beauharnais, who would soon go on to be Josephine Bonaparte, Empress of France. In July 1795, with no political or military power left on the island, Spain agreed to sign the Treaty of Basel with France. Around this time, Louverture began to rebuild the island by re-establishing agriculture and the exportation of goods. He also managed to maintain a certain level of peace over the parts he controlled, which was essentially more than half of Saint Domingue. Now, fighting for the French, he began clearing out Spanish supporters from the Cordon de la Cueste, as well as facing off against some of his former colleagues. Now, another wrinkle happened, and in an effort to take advantage of the instability on the island, the British landed forces, and with the help of Jamaican Lieutenant Governor Adam Williamson, tried to sign a treaty with French colonists promising a return to pre-war conditions, i.e., slavery. As with any kind of uprising or revolt, there is a fear that it will spread, and in particular, the British and United States feared slave results spreading. On April 30th, 1798, Louverture signed a treaty with British General Maitland. The British agreed to withdraw troops from the island in exchange for a general amnesty for French counter-revolutionaries. As a result, Port-au-Prince was returned to French rule in May. A few months later, in secret, Louverture signed another treaty with the British, who would lift the blockade in exchange that Louverture would not cause unrest in the British West Indies. The 1790s were a unique time in history, and as France continued to rotate regimes in their revolution, they also became embroiled in a quasi-war with the United States. Louverture used this to his benefit and negotiated with American President John Adams, who was sympathetic to the Haitians' cause. In 1799, a full-scale civil war broke out on the island, known as the War of Knives. Eventually, Louverture and his forces would suppress this revolt, and his rival would flee first to Guadeloupe and then France in 1800. At the same time, Napoleon would come to power in France, and he maintained the abolition of slavery, but forbade an invasion of Spanish Saint Domingue, which Louverture would invade anyway in 1801. In March of that year, a constitutional assembly was held, and a constitution was drafted and passed on July 7, 1801. In the document, among other things, was the establishment of Louverture as Governor-General for life, with near-absolute powers and the ability to choose his own successor. What is unique is that it did not declare independence. Instead, in Article 1, it would remain a French colony. Napoleon did not take kindly to this document. He refused to accept it, and in 1802 sent an expeditionary force of 20,000 to Saint Domingue to subdue the colonists. This force would eventually capture Louverture and transport him to a French jail, where he would die a year later. In 1804, Haiti would declare its independence officially from France under General Jacques Dessalines, who would proclaim himself Emperor Jacques I. He himself would be killed 2 years later, ironically, putting down a revolt. The American colonies kick-started what came to be known as the Age of Revolution, and looking back at it, it's amazing how smoothly it went. The French Revolution was a bloodbath with a revolving door of figureheads and leading factions, and the Haitian Revolution was a back-and-forth tug-of-war of European powers. Toussaint Louverture proves to be an interesting character in that he jumped sides but also accumulated a massive wealth while protecting his family and former master. He was the leader of a nation that had not formally declared independence and then ended up losing his life as a result. Given the time he lived, it's easy to overlook him aside from historians or those familiar with his story, but that's what makes him a forgotten figure. If you enjoyed this video, check out the other videos on my YouTube page, and if you have a suggestion for a person who is forgotten by history, drop it in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe, and also follow me on Twitter at pastandpresent4. Thanks for watching.